recording now just because that I don't want to forget. And I will be happy to share the file. If any of you guys want to record as well, just in case there's something weird or glitchy, then you can go ahead and do that. Let me see. It may ask me for permission, Jen, if you try. So why don't you go ahead and try?
I did, and it says, please ask the host to give you permission, but I'm also fine just to have you record and send us the file.
Right.
That might be easiest.
Okay. I mean, usually it's fine. Okay. Yeah. I don't know how to give you permission. I would, but
I know.
All right. Well, we're recording either way. Do you guys hear any background noise here with me?
Yeah, let me know if you hear background noise from me, because I think we Instacart just got delivered, and so like Luna is protecting the household. So let me just close the door.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm sure you might hear a little bit of gleeful screaming because Ryan and his friend are in the pool.
That's awesome.
So sorry.
No problem.
Let
Yeah, I think
that's too much.
we have my son downstairs building an obstacle course with all of my gym equipment. And so I hear a lot of thumping, but I think it's just me hearing it, and I don't think the mic is picking it up.
No.
So you guys let me know before we get officially started how you want the flow to be. I think that the questions that I wrote down and shared with you guys are kind of some good starting points. We may go off on tangents, but maybe we could start with just introducing ourselves, and then we'll jump into those questions. I'll have them up for reference if you want me to do the prompts. And then at any point, if anyone else has any other questions where you want to hear the other two and their responses, then just jump in. I think it can feel pretty conversational, and it'll probably be good that way.
And one thing I was thinking is that when we do our intros, I think we can introduce what our podcast is, because I would love to have your podcast links on mine, and I would love it, vice versa. And so I think the fact that we're three women in orthopedics that have some good podcast numbers, we should be doing this, promoting one another. And
absolutely,
I've talked about this for months, so I'm so excited that it's happening. So if it's okay with you, let's do that, and that way you guys can cut that out if you don't like that, but I would love to have that on my version.
I think that's great.
I would love it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm just making a note and make sure the editor puts that in on our show notes. Okay, cool. All righty. Okay.
And then Dr. Weiss, do you have another mic or something? Because I think I feel like my audio and Dr. Shipley's audio is like here, and I think your audio is down here.
Let me try something, and then if it doesn't work, I will go find another one.
Yeah, because I do hear that.
Did that get better or no?
It's still a little bit quiet. Do you have your... Oh, okay.
My editor is my wife, and so if I don't fix this, then I get in trouble. So...
Yeah,
I wish that I had.
Oh, that's better. So
it was actually an editor? Yeah, I use an editor, Bearbeat Productions. They're based in the Philippines, and they're super affordable. Seeing as how I generate no revenue from my podcast.
Yeah. Same.
It's probably similar to the both of you. It's a passion project. So so I try to be thrifty where I can, but I also realize it just takes a lot of time to edit. And while I could learn how to do it, I don't think I want to.
Yeah, no, it definitely takes someone who has expertise in doing all those things. I think it's one thing to be able to kind of learn how to like produce the podcast, the, publishing platforms and all those sorts of things. But I think it's a whole nother beast to like edit it and, do the intros and all those sorts of things.
Yeah. So does your wife have background in that?
She's a filmmaker. So she does
cool.
like video editing and filming and those sorts of things. And so, so we do that. We just have a glass of wine and just edit the podcast.
Oh, how fun. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm a fan of your podcast. It's pretty
Well,
awesome.
thank you. As am I. It's just, I think it's great that all of this stuff is coming out, and I feel like, especially with this recent intern class that matched, like I'm feeling a slightly more hopeful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's still so much more work to be done, obviously,
Yes.
and buy-in, I think, from the guys and accountability. So that's sort of
Yes.
part of where, what we're hoping to do with the, Speak Up Ortho movement.
Right.
How's it going, Jen?
That better? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Okay, good.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Is that like a gaming headset?
Of course. And that's
Oh,
where it
really?
ended up, in my son's room, in his backpack.
That's amazing. Well, then maybe I'll just kick it off, and maybe I'll just say this is so amazing to have the three of us here. Why don't we go around and introduce ourselves, and then we'll just start with one of you guys. And yeah. Okay. All right. We're already
Love it.
recording, and everyone's good on time till probably 2, but not necessarily. It'll probably be a little shorter, I think. Okay. All right. So maybe after about 30, somewhere in the 30 to 40 minute range, if one of you guys don't, then I'll kind of prompt and just say, well, this has been, really amazing. And maybe we can end with each of us giving one piece of advice to someone who wants to do what we do. Does that sound like a good way to wrap up? Okay.
I support that.
All right. Awesome. Okay. We'll pause for a second. Well, this is really an amazing opportunity I'm going to start again. Well, this is a really amazing opportunity for us three to get together. We're all orthopedic surgeons. We all happen to be women, and I would love to have each of us introduce ourselves. So, Alana, why don't you start?
Of course. My name is Dr. Alana Munger. I'm a third-year resident at Yale New Haven Hospital. I am the creator and host and producer and co-editor of the She Can Fix It podcast, which is a podcast that was meant to inspire and empower the women of orthopedic surgery. So that is who I am.
I'm Jennifer Weiss. I am a pediatric orthopedist. I work in Los Angeles, and I have a podcast with my sister, another Dr. Weiss, Dr. Leah Weiss, and our podcast is called Grand Rounds. We just finished season 1, which was Purpose in a Pandemic, and season 2 is coming, and it will be about disruption. And I am so excited to share a conversation with the two of you who are quite inspirational to so many.
And I'm Nancy Yen Shipley. I'm an orthopedic surgeon as well, and I practice in Portland, Oregon. My specialty is arthroscopy and sports medicine. I am the creator and host of the 6% podcast with NancyMD, and I talk to women in male-dominated fields, including orthopedic surgery, but really across all different industries as well. And so we are really lucky to all three be together. We're kind of doing this triple threat podcast get together. And we have a lot of things to talk about. I think we have just unique and different perspectives on our common path, and lots of different topics that we can delve into. I think we should start maybe with different barriers that each of us may have faced going into orthopedics. Who wants to start?
I'm happy to start. I have shared a story pretty widely about one of the first conversations that I had with one of my attendings in residency, in which he shared with me that there's 2 kinds of women in orthopedics: the kind that shouldn't be orthopedists and the kind that shouldn't be women. Talk about a wall right at the beginning.
Alana?
What's really funny is I was actually thinking about this, and it's, I was an athlete in college. I'm 6 feet tall. I have shoulders that linebackers would be proud of. And so I am an athlete, and I certainly fit the mold for that stereotype of women who go into ortho. And so I think it's funny, like those barriers were more kind of how one does it rather than like, do you actually fit? I think that, when medical students are contemplating about orthopedic surgery, it's sometimes there's either the one, would I even be able to get into the field? And then there's the second question of, would I be able to thrive in this field? And so I never really thought like, oh, I wouldn't fit in or whatever. Like I was, just as strong as the guys and all those sorts of things. But I think that it was kind of, would I be able to thrive in the field, and would I be able to find, my squad and my group of people who I would be happy working with? So that was kind of more the questions that I had when I was going through my journey.
I will add for the listeners that while we're recording here on Zoom, obviously they're all listening to audio, but I couldn't tell that you were 6 feet tall because we're all sitting down.
It's true.
Well, I think one of my barriers, probably was just all of the words and all of the comments that people posed to me as I informed them I was going into orthopedics. Now, I would say that, it was almost despite that, I did fine, obviously, and I got into orthopedics and felt like I had thrived. But, I could see how it could deter somebody from entering the field if someone's early in their decision-making process, or maybe they haven't entered medical school yet, but all they've ever wanted to do was orthopedics. And to have the repetitive commentary of why a woman shouldn't be in orthopedics or couldn't, I could see how that would wear somebody down. I think for me, the more somebody told me no, I would say, well, I'm going to prove you wrong, which means probably as a child, I was pretty hard to deal with because I didn't want to take no for an answer. Yeah. What do you think, Jen?
I learned a term recently called weathering. And I will have to dig the name up of the very amazing, brilliant woman who explained this to me. And what she taught me was that there's a phenomenon that's known in the Black community, which is, and I hope I will do this justice, but as you grow up through the generations of being treated in a certain way, that it doesn't just build up in your psyche, but perhaps even in your DNA. And so that term was such an eye-opener to me, and maybe a microcosm of that phenomenon that I think I certainly have experienced as a woman in orthopedics, because at the beginning I was, and most days I'm still in the, I'm also almost 6 feet tall, like not me, I'm good. It's a problem for the other people. And as the weeks, months, years, and now decades have gone on, and I see others treated in a certain way, and we'll get to our experience with Speak Up Ortho, it's really impacting me over and over now.
I'm glad you bring that up because obviously we got together to talk about our respective experiences, but I definitely want to bring light to the fairly recent development of this initiative called Speak Up Ortho. And so, Jen, I'll let you speak to that to start, and we will chime in.
Great. As usual, I go off script and bring it up when we're not supposed to, but
hey, this is a free-flowing conversation, as I think a lot of our podcasts are. So
yes.
So Speak Up Ortho came about. I just wrote a history of us as a pitch. So I've got some dates in my mind. On March 2nd, there was a post created on a private Facebook page that is Women in Orthopedics. And that page has about 1,500 women on it. And a physician wrote a post asking the group to tell the stories or comment with the most sexist thing that had happened to them in interviews, residency, fellowship, or career. And as of yesterday, there were 349 comments on that page. Somewhere around comment 150, I got tagged and asked Jennifer Weiss something about what are the leaders going to do about this? And at that point, I was very clear to myself, although I do wear a leadership hat in the Orthopedic Academy, this was not my academy hat in any way. And I gathered a group who are all anonymous still to start this campaign called Speak Up Ortho. And the beginnings have happened on social media, and we have stories that are submitted anonymously, and we take those stories and de-identify in every way that we can and share them as posts. The stories are mostly sad and frustrating and bad, but there are some good ones. And our goal, I believe that our mission is to gather our voices, make sure that people do not feel alone in their experiences, and then move the needle. So advocacy is our goal, so that we can make things different for the women coming behind us, and Dr. Munger's generation, we hope, will feel things differently. So that's Speak Up Ortho.
So, Alana, I'm curious, when you first encountered the initiative, and I know that it sort of didn't have any names or faces behind it at first. What was your initial thought?
It's heart-wrenching, just reading these stories and realizing that these are real experiences that are, like, honestly traumatic. And I honestly, when I first was reading them, I felt so horrible for these people who went through it, and I honestly am so sorry that they've had those experiences. And it really inspired me to keep doing the work that we're doing, such that my generation and the generation that's coming up behind me, that our experiences are different. Where if any of this happens today, I hope that there is processes in place such that, we feel empowered to at least report it, anonymous reporting, something where not only is it something where people agree that it's bad, but those who are responsible, like, the repercussions are made, right? Rather than, because some of the stories are basically like, this horrific thing happened and the leadership did nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
my hope is that, we are able to change the minds of some folks, both women surgeons as well as the male surgeons. Because at the end of the day, we want to increase diversity in our field. We can't depend on the 6% of female surgeons in our field to make that big change, and I think a lot of the advocates that I've had in my own career have been my male attendings. And I really appreciate everything that they've done for me. And I think that that's kind of, it was this heart-wrenching feeling. And I felt so horrible. And I felt so sorry that people had experienced this. And it really just lit a fire to be like, this needs to be, like, these stories need to kind of dwindle out. That was kind of what my thoughts were.
And, and obviously this is a pseudo-anonymous group. It's a collective effort. There are many women who are putting a lot of time into this. I think Jen and I both kind of don't mind so much not being anonymous, but, I want to make sure that it's not just us. Gosh, so many women are putting so much hard work into this. And and I really, it really just got me thinking when I first started seeing just the volume of stories that were coming in that private thread, um that I feel fortunate in that a lot of the things that happened to me were very minor, or said to me were very minor. I came out of residency and fellowship training without any, assault or harassment, unlike many other women. And so it's almost like I had a little bit of a feeling of guilt, kind of like survivor's guilt, that I somehow got through it without having experienced something as as horrible, as some of these women had talked about. But it also made me feel compelled to do something more, which is why I'm really glad that this collective of strong surgeons had gotten together to talk about this. Um, and I think it's important for some of those stories are just so shocking, and it's kind of from the inside. They're shocking, but not shocking, sadly. And in talking to, I'm about 10 years into practice, and in talking to some of the women who are 25, 30 years into practice, it's sad to hear that, well, things haven't changed that much. It's like they have, but they haven't. We're definitely seeing more women in training and entering the field, and we're seeing, more and more women out there practicing. There are women who are embracing their roles in their respective families while also practicing, and continuing to have personal interests, and kind of showing how dynamic we are. But on one level, we've come a long way, but in other ways, there's still so much progress to be had. And one thing that really got me thinking, even as we were getting this initiative up and running, is just thinking about what impact these shocking stories would have, but what kind of lasting impact, and whether it would spur on change. And Jen and I have talked a lot about the concept of tempered radicalism, which I don't know if the both of you had had read originals by Adam Grant, but that was a chapter that, to me, as a woman in orthopedics, a person of color within orthopedics, really was impactful, because the idea, and I'm not going to do it justice at all. I think everybody should just go read the chapter who's listening. But that they talked about the suffragists and two different movements, in which one set of suffragists decided to uh, kind of align themselves with a group that was oh, remind me, Jen. They were, they had a lot of racist origins, right? And so they said this group is very powerful, so we're going to align with them. Whereas the other group had said, these women said, I think that kind of departs from our morals and our ethics, and I think that is not going to be a way to garner widespread support. And so they took a more tempered form of radicalism, right? Because it's still radical, like, to in many circles, to have women orthopedic surgeons. It's just not, we're not the norm yet. And so, I think that it speaks to the idea of garnering wider support for this movement, for this platform, as opposed to, coming out guns blazing and being like, I'm going to take out whoever's in my way. I think it's just such a different approach. And that's something that Jen and I have talked a lot about, in just thinking about who we are and our positions within our field.
I think also, I think I've spoken with both of you about the phases that we enter. And so I'm pushing 50, and I had this recognition in the last couple of years that I had unintentionally graduated from being a pleaser to a driver, and that the reception of those two styles coming from a woman are entirely different. And I'm curious, a lot of you're smack dab in the middle of your training.
Yeah.
Do you find, how are you finding your options to communicate who you are and finding your ground and style within orthopedics? I know how you do it on your podcast. How do you do it on the ground? How do you do it when you're taking care of patients? How are you finding your voice?
Right. No, I think it's something that I've learned in my residency training, and I think this is true no matter what specialty you're in. It's where the strong female and how that is perceived. And, you know, at our hospital, we have these things called RL solutions, which I like to call ruining lives solutions, but it's basically this way for people to report things that have happened in the hospital. And I've gotten an RL solution because of the fact that I was doing long leg splints in the ICU and I got plaster on the wall and I didn't clean it up. Whereas my male colleagues can literally rip through an ED resident or do something like that and they never get an RL solution. And so it's this double standard of what I'm allowed to say and how I'm allowed to respond to someone. And those are the things that I've kind of learned. And so I think right now it's kind of this, like, you're walking on eggshells with, you know, you get that consult where I remember this one time, I got a PA in the ED called me about a patient that he had not even seen yet. No images, like literally had not even seen the patient. And it took every fiber of my body to just be like, you know what, I'm just going to go see it. I'm just going to go see it for you, you know, rather than having that like discussion of it is inappropriate to call the specialist on call when you have not yet examined your patient and you have not yet attempted to perform a workup to figure out what might be wrong with the patient, you know? So that's kind of what I've learned, at least in my training thus far.
I'm going to pile onto that because 5 years ago, so I was pushing 45, I got in trouble literally for teaching because I had a similar situation. I did not hold back. I was polite, but I shared with the resident who was consulting me that it was excellent etiquette to examine the patient and to get x-rays if you're consulting about a fracture. So I wish I could tell you that that gets better with gray hairs.
And, you know, and you bring up some excellent points about just sort of the image of the strong woman and kind of how that interplay occurs within our field and many other fields. And, you know, I think a lot about how societally, a lot of times the words that are used to describe strength and the words that are used to describe weakness or something negative tend to have that masculine and feminine dichotomy, excuse me. Like being brave, right? You want to tell somebody to be brave, you tell them to grow a pair, right? And so that's like that positive connotation of having braveness, you know, somehow has testicle stone in there. And so whereas, you know, if you're thinking about you know, you guys can give me, see, here I am saying you guys, you ladies can give me an example of, you know, something being more feminine. You know, it's like, run like a girl, right? Or you hit like a girl. And that is, you know, that assigns that weakness to femininity. And, you know, I think like societally, not even just within our field, we have we have so much to reckon with in looking at even just the assignment of nomenclature to different traits. And so, it's like tomboy, a girl that's a tomboy. And I always describe, and I still do sometimes. I'll be like, "Oh, okay, sometimes I'm a tomboy, or I grew up a tomboy." And, but we have to think about what those words do to children who are hearing words like that. That, oh, well, you can't be into sports, and you can't, like to skin your knees and play in the dirt and still be a girl, right? And so there's so much power there. And it's just it really is a lot to think about. And it's so deeply ingrained in us societally, and even in me personally, that I slip all the time, and I'd say, "Hey guys," and I'm talking to girls, and I use different terms that I'm just used to using, but it's definitely making me think more about it.
I know I've had actually really cute moments in the resident room where I mean the guys know that I'm, have a podcast, the feminists of the residency, all those sorts of things. And so now they're starting to recognize it a little bit. And so, how sometimes you refer to doctors and they'll say, "Oh, this is how, the guys," and then they'll go, "and gals." And I'm like, "Thank you." And so it's nice how kind of when we are vocal, when we kind of call things out. And what's nice is just like I'm at a great program where, we're like a family. And so you can kind of like call them out on it sometimes and they respond. And it's never this moment of like, "Oh, she's so sensitive, like da 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 da." It really is just like, "All right, Alana." And then they make the change, So I
Yeah.
think that there is hope. And I think that, as long as we continue to be present, be vocal about these things, I do have hope that we can sort of slowly over the decades, at least make some sort of a change.
Alana, can you share with our listeners who's your chief at your program, or your chair? Sorry, chair. I don't
My
like the word
chair
chief, but we
is
use
Dr.
it.
Lisa Latanza, who's one of the few female chairs in the country, and she's just been absolutely slaying it. And what was amazing is I felt so horrible for her because, certainly when she came onto our, took the position, our department needed some work, right, in terms of all the things that she had planned to do, and then COVID happened. And so she actually went and took like a leadership position in the hospital to make sure that we always had enough PPE for the entire hospital. So I think that was just a real testament to, no matter what got thrown at her, she's like, "COVID pandemic, sure, I'll take up the leadership position for my hospital," So it really was inspiring for us.
I would
Yeah, and I
love,
think,
sorry, please go.
sorry. I mean, I think that it starts at the top, and you are having the really unique experience. There are 3 residency programs in the country who have your experience of having a strong woman leading.
Right.
And I think that we see already how it feels to come up in that program. So just shout out to Lisa Latanza, a superwoman.
No,
Go ahead,
she
Nancy.
really is.
Sorry.
Yeah.
One of the things I was thinking about in the context of Speak Up Ortho is there are definitely stories of women who have been denied a fair experience and a fair shot at their education because of bias. But, it's interesting because there can also sometimes be instances in which um, your attending or your resident kind of goes easy on you because they don't want to be a jerk, right? Or they think that you need to be gone easy on. And I think that's another form of, oftentimes to get conscious or unconscious bias, in which you're denied the rigor of your training and your education because of being a woman. And so, I have an interesting story to share on that. And like I think I think back, it was very memorable. I'm sure this person doesn't even remember who I am. I was rotating as a fourth year student in a program. This was a junior resident who was male. And I actually had a really good month there and learned a lot, saw a lot. And my junior resident who was with me was so nice, like the nicest person. I had no issues, and I had worked with a great chief, and got in there, got to operate. But the junior resident just didn't teach me very much very often, and I kind of chalked it up to, well, this person just hasn't had the chance to develop their teaching skills as a resident as part of their responsibilities, right? um and on my last night there, I will share that on my drive home, this was the only time I'd cried in medical school. Um, that night, a new student who was starting a 1 month rotation had started. It was a guy. And, we kind of say our hellos. And immediately, the resident who was with me the whole month, we're down in the ER looking at the light boxes. This is how long ago this was, putting up like the actual paper x rays, not digital. He turns his back to me and turns to the new guy and says, "All right, well, let me teach you the basics of how to read an x ray." And just kind of launches into this, very interactive slash didactic about the basics of how to approach an x ray. And I was just thinking, he, we spent a lot of time together, and he didn't do anything like that with me. And I even back then, I was thinking, I don't think he was doing that on purpose. I think it was unconscious. And so I drove home and I was so angry and I was so sad. I was so angry because it felt so powerless. There was nothing I could have done differently to have earned that education. Um, it was an immutable piece of me that prevented me from getting that, and that made me just so angry. And so, and while it's not, that's not like some of the actual sexual abuse and harassment that some of our colleagues have gone through. I think I also felt that so deeply because it became clear to me that there was always going to be that undercurrent there in different situations. And then I know I'm like rambling on, but I want to add something to that. I was at an academy session. And for the listeners, this is an orthopedic national academy meeting. And I was at a session on public speaking and being able to give media interviews. And in that class, I had related this story because it was an important story of mine. And an older gentleman in the class at the end of me telling the story said, "Did it ever occur to you that maybe the guy just didn't like you?" And that was the reasoning, for why I didn't get an opportunity to get that education for that month. And so it is, yeah, it's just so it's deeply impactful, I think, when you go through that and then you have that realization that your gender is going to impact what you get education wise in some circumstances.
I think that the responsibility of receiving these stories is tremendous. And the responsibility of honoring the experience, not comparing of this is better, worse. They're all different.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, Nancy, when that happened, and we talked about the second arrow phenomenon too, which is you get hurt and then you get hurt again as you're retelling and trying to heal.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, the group of women that has come together and is growing every week with Speak Up Ortho, every single one takes this responsibility of receiving these stories in such it's huge, and we all see it and feel it. And the person who did that had no idea that, I think it's been 3 years now, and that's still painful.
Oh
for
yeah.
you. It's
That's
the
fresh.
second pain. Yeah.
Yeah. And, and I think that it's not enough for the women to find community within ortho, as amazing as it has been. I mean, this has been so awesome. Like every time I go to a meeting and the women's bathroom line is longer, I really have to pee, but I'm like, oh, this is so great. There are other women here. But, it's like, I think one of the biggest challenges is how do you share the stories? How do you change the culture? How do you get buy-in from the individuals who are not the target of the bias? What do you two think is the best way to engage and to encourage active advocacy?
So I think that some of these things are done with like malicious intent, and sometimes these things are done out of ignorance. And I think I'll share two stories that I have. I was on a rotation and I absolutely like slayed it. Like not a single ball was dropped. I was so proud. I worked so hard. And what I came to learn later on was that the senior residents who I was working under, when they were talking about me and the job that I did, they asked like, oh, how did Alana do? And the response was, the female attendings take it easy on the women, or just like the attendings in general take it easy on the women. And you're just like that is something that was done just like with malicious intent. It wasn't done out of ignorance. It was meant to say that the work that I had done was just meant nothing because the attendings, quote unquote, took it easier on me. And so I think that that's kind of one kind of way in which we experience discrimination, and those who, do it. It's, yeah, exactly, Dr. Weiss. It's to put someone down. Whereas the other story that I have, I think is literally the only like workplace microaggression I've ever experienced as a gay woman, where I was in a procedure and there was 90s music playing, and Ricky Martin came on, and I was like, oh, this is great, love Ricky Martin. And people are talking about Ricky Martin, and someone was like, oh, I had no idea he was gay. And the scrub tech who had been handing me instruments the entire day was like, oh, he's as crooked as they come. And I remember thinking about that, and I'm like, first of all, the wrong derogatory term was utilized in this situation. Like, it's not crooked. Crooked is someone who's deceptive or has done something illegal. What he had meant to say was that he is as bent as they come. So that was point number one. Point number two was that and he was a nice guy, but he literally had no idea that the surgeon he was handing instruments to was, bent just like Ricky Martin, right? And I think it was kind of this thing where like you're literally in the middle of a case and you're operating, and you just kind of like take a step back and you're just like, ooh, am I a lesser human being right now?
Yeah.
But I think that was something that was made completely out of ignorance. Like if he had known me, who I am, if he had met like my amazing wife, of course he'd be like, these people are amazing, like the A-team's awesome, all these sorts of things. But I think, and I think sometimes when those moments where something is said out of ignorance, it's something where it's like, what, that mind can be changed, right? And I think what's been so hard hearing the stories and reading the stories about the Speak Up Ortho is that so many of them are done with just such a malicious intent. And I think that that's kind of what also is so heartbreaking. And I think those are the hearts and those are the minds that are going to be so much more challenging to change if they could be changed at all.
Right.
But my hope is that those people who are kind of making those statements with that just malintent, that those are kind of in the minority, whereas the majority of folks, the more common microaggressions, those are just made out of ignorance. And yes, it does hurt feeling like a lesser human being as you operate. But at the end of the day, you're like, if he just knew me, if he just like met who my wife and met us, like his mind could be changed. And so I think it's kind of for the majority of those ignorant microaggressions, it's this, right? It's talking about it. It's being visible. Like, I think that's kind of the movement forward.
And kind of going back to, your earlier comment about being written up for something, I think in those situations where these actions or these words come from an ignorant place, I think, our society has gotten so into like the whole, cancel culture and public shaming. And I think like those are opportunities in which, you pull the person aside, kind of like praise in public, discipline in private or whatever. And I think that's a situation where you say, hey, you need to know that these words matter and that it affected me because, I happen to be gay or whatever. I think that, and that's a little bit different than somebody who is saying or doing something out of pure maliciousness. And, and I think like one of the things with Speak Up Ortho is that, we have so many stories that are like very negative and shocking. It was really important to me to also kind of highlight instances in which positive action was taken, and not just by the person who was receiving the bias or the harassment, but by the bystander, and just kind of advocating for bystander intervention, whether it be for women within orthopedics or whether it be with, what we're seeing on the news now, the rise of hate crimes against Asian Americans, mid-pandemic. It's like, how do you get bystanders to speak up and take action when they see things that are not okay? And I think that's a big thing. I will, as an aside, mention that when you said that he said that Ricky Martin was crooked, and I was like, he's a criminal? I was very confused when
I know. I know. And I was just like, sir, if you're gonna make the derogatory comment, like, use the right word.
I was like, what, did he embezzle or what?
Exactly.
So one thing that comes up for me as I listen to your beautiful positivity from both of you is, I think in recent months, maybe year or two, the tempered part of my radicalism is on the decline, at least right now, because when I was a resident, when I was a younger attending, when I was in my pleasing phase, getting asked to be on this board or this, lead this or do that and get, up. I thought, oh, they're getting to know me. And look, it's just a matter of they know who I am and that I'm doing good work. And then there's a point at which the good work becomes differently received. And so the positivity that I was able to carry and still am holding on for, and it's why I surround myself with people like you guys. But it's hard to hold on to, as I feel like the glass ceiling is now like bumping down on me. And if it is for me, how that's going to happen for everybody coming up behind me. And also the times when the tempered part, or appropriate and not appropriate. Yeah, tempered radicalism if somebody needs education. But we're talking hate crimes, we're talking, racism, we're talking homophobia, we're talking sexism. The tempered part is hard for me to hold on to. And so I think that's why you mentioned the community is not enough, but it's so absolutely crucial to me right now, because you guys are my tempered aspect, because I am really wanting to go and speak without filter, and that's probably not the best approach either.
Well, I think maybe the tempered part is best directed towards those who have potential for being allies and advocates, whereas drop that big Thor hammer on the people who just unabashedly maliciously want to harass or break the rules, or whatever it is, like, drop that hammer. And I think that I think that there are different times for different approaches and different people that you use different approaches on.
I will say, as I know we're going to be wrapping up soon, I wish the listeners could see my head, because I look like a Muppet. Like, I've been nodding so vigorously. And it just, to me, this space is so precious to be able to share these thoughts with you women today.
I will say something that, sorry, go ahead, Dr. Chipley.
No, please.
I had the good fortune of being able to interview Dr. Christy Weber, which is a podcast that will be coming out in a month or two, and kind of about her experience as our first female president of the Academy. And, we talk about glass ceiling like that, like glass was on the floor, ladies, at that time. And it was great that she had gotten to that moment. And I think one of the things that I asked her was, the Academy and orthopedic surgery is just this huge steamship that has been on this one path for decades. And the way that the Academy has been done, the way that orthopedic surgery in general has been done, has just been this one path. And we're doing something simply because of the fact that it's how we've done it before. And so I kind of asked her, like, how do you even steer that thing? Like, how do you even change the trajectory of that thing? And it was interesting to hear her thoughts about it. And she basically talked about the fact that you go in with goals, and you also make sure that you have something that others can do as well when they come up behind you. I had no idea that there's this 5-year track where she of course has her baby projects that she wants to do, but it really is something where when she leaves the position of president and becomes past president, there is still someone who's able to carry on the goals and things that she wanted to do. And so I think that gives me hope, in the sense that, there is always, there's a lot wrong with orthopedic surgery. Let's be real. I don't think that any of us would have podcasts if everything was rainbows and sunshine in the field of orthopedic surgery. But I think that, our job is to, we've all climbed these terrible wooden ladders, and our job is to not pull up the ladder. Our job is not to put the same, terrible wooden ladder back. Our job is to go to Home Depot, get the steel ladders and throw 5 of them down there. And I think that's kind of something that I really get so hopeful when I, am with other women, and I, watch kind of the Speak Up Ortho stories. And it just really is just this needs to be better. We have to make this better for those who come behind us.
I will share your admiration of Christy. She is a dear friend, and I will share that I've had that awesome experience of vicariously living a lot that she's done, and such gratitude for her. And she often says and I don't want to misquote you, Christy, but if she's the first, but she cannot be the last.
Right.
And I will throw out there that we now have 4 people behind her. Yeah, we just had the 4th, who's not a woman. So it's time, right? It's time. And the way the Academy works, she is the chair of the nominating committee this year. And this is a time for us to keep our fingers and toes crossed.
Right.
She's not, that she's followed.
Well, I know that we could probably go on for like 3 hours easily without blinking an eye, but we will wrap this up. And I would love to finish with each of us giving their best piece of advice to a woman who wants to follow in their footsteps. Alana, what do you think?
I think that what I would tell them is that there are going to be barriers. Like I wouldn't ever want them to think that this is an easy path. And I would want them to understand that, listen to yourself and remember why you went into medicine in the first place. And, I remember there are certain like patient interactions that I have that give me so much joy because there are those reminders that are like, I went into medicine to like care for people and take care of people. And there are going to be so many things that will be said to you, and you're going to be at the point of exhaustion. But I think what I would say is that, you are so enough and you are more than enough and you have everything that is needed to do this. And you are going to make such a bright spot and just put such an amazing mark on the field. And I think I would just want them to keep going. That's what I would say.
Love it. Love it. Jen?
What I am going to say, and I'm going to kind of say it to my younger self, maybe, there is a hive. You will be in this hive with some amazing other unicorns. And that doesn't mean it's not going to be tough when you leave the hive and do your work. But the more that you're out there doing your work, being a good doctor and doing what's right, the more people that get to see you. You can't be what you can't see. And that just existing and doing a good job and loving what you do and holding on to that passion is the most fulfilling.
And I think I would echo what both of you said, but maybe what I will add is that, and you mentioned a hive, I think I can't underscore the importance of finding community. And even though before I said that that's not enough, it is still one must. It's a must have. To be able to find those that are like-minded and that you can feel like you can not only run cases by, but also just, sometimes you have a bad day. You got to gripe about everything that went wrong, and to have those ears and those minds to hear you and make sure you know that you're heard. And even just someone saying, I'm sorry, and I've been there, and go have a glass of red wine because sometimes you just need to. And so I can't underscore the importance of community. Well, this has been amazing. And maybe we'll have to do a part 2 and part 3 in the future and have the three of us on again.
Absolutely. Such a pleasure, ladies.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Okay. We really could have gone on forever.
I just kept going.
I know. I like looked up at my computer clock and I was like, whoa, where did the time go?
I know.
Well, this is awesome. I will save this and then I will send you guys the entire file. In fact, what I'll do, because it'll be kind of big, is I'll put it in a Google Drive and then I will share the link and give you access so you can download, and you'll see, I don't know if either of you record on Zoom, but there will be the one track with all of us, and then there'll be the individual ones as well. So, perfect. All right. Have a wonderful weekend.
Yes,
you guys too. So good to connect. Happy Friday.
Well, happy Friday. Talk soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.